Welcome to the 10th episode of the Gabriel podcast. Today I have a really cool guest, a person I came across actually on Instagram, and I got to browse her content. Her name is Ellie Alcala here. On Instagram, she um, emphasizes a lot on side hustles, entrepreneurship, business productivity, and I just resonated with her content. I'm just really glad that she decided to come talk to us today. So, welcome, Ellie.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, Gabriel, it's a pleasure. Like when you reached out to me, I was super excited because I've never been a guest on anyone's podcast. I once did a video with my friend where it was kind of podcast set up, but never with someone that I don't know or someone from the internet. So when you reached out to me, I was immediately excited.
Oh, well, that's super cool. Yeah. I'm just super interested in hearing people's stories, and especially when I came across your content. I just knew like, wow, it would be really cool to kind of get her mindset, to see like how she got to where she like is, and like most definitely like what she plans, and like yeah, just to get that story. So I'm super excited to hear what what you have to say for today.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can go ahead and ask away, and I'll do my best to answer
Yeah.
and not go on a rant because I go on so many rants.
No problem at all. Well, just really quickly, just to give the audience a little bit background, it's currently 8 o'clock on a Saturday. We were trying to find a good time, and this is where we landed, at 8 o'clock in the
In
morning.
the morning, yeah.
But it was really cool because it's I think it was only a week after we first contacted her, so it wasn't really that long. So that's cool, that we can do this so quickly, just because I was super excited. So yeah, I mean, how has your morning been like so far, and just how have you been?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. Yeah, so this morning, I mean, I we were talking about before the podcast before you started recording that I'm like shifting toward waking up in the morning. I feel like it's been an ongoing goal of mine to wake up earlier, but I'm definitely more of a night owl. But last night I actually went to bed early. And yeah, I mean, this morning it wasn't that hard to wake up because I was excited. And usually before I meet anyone new, I mean, I've never been on a podcast, but like, of course, I was like watching your previous podcast. And I feel like that was a good way to start my morning because I listened to your first one. I forgot his name, but he's like a music teacher, I believe.
Harley was him.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
like just a beautiful soul. And then
Oh.
I also, I mean, I didn't have that much time this morning, but I also listened to another podcast from I think a graduate student or an intern at Long Beach. So it was just nice to start my morning off by listening to people that I don't know have like an awesome mindset and are really doing cool things with their own lives. But yeah, that's just, I mean, that's how my morning's going.
Hmm.
And I can also start by giving a little bit of background about myself.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, I'm currently in Southern California. I am based in the greater Los Angeles area. I was born and raised in the greater Los Angeles area. So, actually, I was born in East LA, East Los Angeles, and pretty much lived there for a majority of my life. And later on, when I went off to college, I was still like in Southern California. I didn't go far for college. I went to Cal State Fullerton, so that's in Orange County. For people that aren't familiar, it's like a school really near Disneyland. That's always what I tell people when they're not familiar with like SoCal. I'm like, oh, it's near Disneyland. They're like, oh, all excited about it. Um, so yeah, at Cal State Fullerton, I studied but molecular biology and biotechnology. I really was interested in research, biological research, which led me to pursue my PhD. So I did a gap year while I sort of like figured out like the application process and all of that. And I just needed a break from college, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I went ahead and applied for graduate school. I didn't apply to too many places because I was paying out of pocket, so I had to be very selective. The application process can be pretty expensive. So After that, I started my graduate school journey in microbiology. I was at UC Berkeley in their microbiology PhD program. And we can get into this later, but just like spoiler alert, I ended up leaving my PhD at the start of the pandemic. So I
Mm.
finished my curriculum and just like finished up the year. And I decided like it wasn't the path that I wanted with like for my life, at least not at this given moment. And yeah, ever since then, it really has become a quest to um, learn more about myself, a quest to learn about like what I want for my future and how I can start building toward it now, today. And so quickly after I left my PhD, I started like networking and trying to find a job because I mean,
Mhm.
it was in the midst of a pandemic. And even though graduate school, at least for the program that I was in, and a lot of PhD programs do pay you, but it's not a lot of money, especially when you're living in California.
Yeah.
So I quickly found a job. I was working at well, at that time, a lot of companies that like
Mhm.
have to do anything with research or biology did repurpose to like processing COVID samples and things like that. So initially, the company that I was working with like did repurpose their entire like workflow to COVID related things. And then within that company, I started doing other like non-COVID things, more like clinical lab type stuff. And that was about a year ago when I started there. And now I'm currently working with a startup company where they focus more on like it's this really cool technology when you where you could produce a lot of compounds or molecules of interest in a cell-free system. So currently a lot of the way that a lot of molecules are produced is by producing them in a cell. And this
Mm.
startup company is really leveraging the fact that you can apply those same cellular systems outside of a cell, making it a less complicated process. So right now, I'm currently part of the few people that do make up that company. It's a growing company. And yeah, I mean, that's currently where I'm at. I do a lot of research and development with them. And on the side, I'm just building a lot of potentially passive streams of income, a lot of potential passive streams of income. So we can definitely go into that a little bit more. I'm
Mhm.
just gonna stop there in case you want to like ask any questions about everything I just said.
Yeah, that is super cool journey.
Thank you.
It's quite interesting. A lot of twists and turns. It seems like some inflection points on certain points there. So interesting, interesting. So it seems like a very common, at least the thing that stayed constant here. It's like a lot of like not microbi, or like was it bio? What was is it
Like,
microbiology? No,
what my PhD, what I was pursuing my PhD in, it was microbiology.
microbiology. But then it was also molecular biology.
Yeah, so my undergrad degree,
Mm-hmm.
my bachelor's in science was in molecular biology and biotechnology,
Okay.
which in its own you can sort of like branch out to so many realms, so many fields of biology. So, but yeah, that's my general background.
I see. So has your interest in like microbiology kind of stayed the same this whole, because it seems like, are you how interested are you in like microbiology, like in terms of I guess, yeah, just how
In
interested?
general, I
Yeah.
mean, I think microbes are super cool. Like the fact that they make up like a majority of like our own bodies, you know,
Right.
like we have a lot of microbe cells, like microbes, microbial cells, microbials are everywhere. Just like from an evolutionary standpoint, like the way that they can survive in just extreme conditions, that's super cool. In regards to like the things that they produce, like you know our antibiotics come from mainly microbes, just like a lot of cool things that they're able to produce. I think they're super fascinating. They are very complex though, like in order for you to tamper with them and make sure they're so with molecular biology and microbiology, a lot of times what you're doing is you're altering the genetic capacity. So, altering what these microbes are capable of producing, for example, or like the phenotypes that they exhibit. So, it a lot of times that requires you to manipulate the microbes at the DNA level. So, I mean, I think all that's super cool. And so, my interest in microbiology as a whole has not wavered. My path through it, like in terms of like me actively pursuing a career in that, I would say definitely, at least not through like the PhD route. It's not
Mhm.
something that I particularly um, visualized for my own life at some point. And yeah, but in terms of now, like it's more leveraging what we know about these microbes, what they produce, like the pathways that they exhibit, to sort of outside of like a microbial cell, how can you leverage that so that, for example, I mean, I'm gonna nerd out on this because I just think biology is super cool.
I love it. I love science.
So like in a microbe, you know, you wanted to say you wanted it to produce X compound, but like the microbe in itself, like it has so many other pathways that are responsible for, one, keeping it alive, two, like metabolism, three, like so many different pathways. So to say that it's going to be efficient at only producing your product of interest, that's like a huge ask in certain situations. So it's the idea of, okay, what if we can just take that particular pathway that we're interested in outside of the microbe and then like make that more efficient outside of a cell system. So
Mm.
that's pretty like novel technology in terms of like um, doing more like a bio, like having that biochemistry happen, like the biochemistry that would have otherwise been happening in the cell, have it happen outside of a cell environment. um, so although it's not like it involves aspects of microbiology, it's definitely more like um, synthetic biology now and like
Mm.
biochemistry, which is really interesting because a lot of things that I'm doing now, like I've previously conducted in other lab experiences, but I'm learning so much that like, and even just being in a like startup environment, there's a lot of milestones that you have to be reaching in order to like continue getting funding. And I guess that's the case for several labs, but it's definitely a little bit more of a fast-paced environment. Um, but I really like it. I really like the team that I'm working with. It's a small team, but we're like growing really fast. But yeah, that's just like to answer. I'm still like super interested. I'm very curious, and um, like that interest itself has not really diminished. It's just more of like me pursuing a career through microbiology. Yeah.
Mm. Right. So when you're taking that process outside of the cell, the efficiency. So I'm assuming like you're trying to increase the efficiency of like creating the product. Is that the whole purpose of that? And
Yes.
and does it is there a process outside of the cell currently that does increase that efficiency?
I mean, yeah, there's like it's a lot of research and development,
Mm.
and like I'm sure other like labs are conducting like optimization for their own pathways of interest, but for the particular pathways that the company is interested in. And I can't really,
Right.
I'm like stepping on eggshells because a lot of it is like stuff that I can't really like in
Hmm.
the specifics of it. It's like confidential information, so I'm just going to like cap how much I say just because I never know like what's
Right.
too much.
Yeah, no
um
problem.
but to answer your question, like great
Hmm.
question first of all, and yeah, it's just sort of like finding ways, whatever pathway that whatever product you're interested in, there's a specific pathway, or there's probably several pathways, but there's like one pathway that you're interested in, and it's sort of like the nuts and bolts, like trying to figure out like in under what conditions you can really maximize those products while having very low cost input. Because if
Mm.
you want to scale something, you want it to like not cost that much money. um yeah, so it's just a matter of finding like the adequate conditions, tampering with a lot of different like uh, yeah, like components of that pathway in order to see if you can produce your product at like an industry scale.
Right. Really fascinating stuff. At least with this whole
Yeah.
like new like biotechnology stuff. I know I'm focusing on the microbiome here, but I just feel like it's such a central part. Like at least it's shown as like a passion, at least for you, and interest. And so I guess like how did that? So did you always like science growing up as a kid, and how did microbiome become like the forefront of your studies?
That is such a good question. And just like, how did I end up here? I wouldn't see, I don't know. So as a child, I guess like I was always like super bookworm, super nerdy. I was more of a timid child. Like
Mhm.
my mom has so many pictures of me like reading. Like I don't know if you ever did this, like, or if it was just me. I don't know if anyone out there if you ever did this, like let me know. But I would like hold a classroom like in my room. So like I would
Dang.
have imaginary students. I would like read to them. I like have always been fascinated in learning. So that always sort of like tilted me more toward like English. Like I like writing, and I have like all these weird poems and songs that I wrote like to crushes that I had when I was like in elementary school. Like what even was I doing? But anyway, like I've always loved just expressing myself through words and just like reading new concepts through books. But like I don't know. I feel like the whole science thing definitely happened later for me. I always saw myself as someone that like I wouldn't say science was my favorite. Like it was always English and arts, of course, because like
Mm.
back then, like art was such a small component that like of our curriculum, at least in my district, where in my school.
Oh
So
yeah.
whenever you can like do anything artsy, like so stoked. But I really liked math. Like I was in all these weird like math competitions that my mom would make me sign up for as a child. And then science was like also not really like I don't really have a large memory of science when I was in elementary school.
Mhm.
In middle school, I would also say like the same. I don't really like I didn't really like my science teacher. Like she was mean. Like she was just,
Oh.
you know how like in middle school you like you know the cool teachers and you know like the mean like students just talk.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she's like a nice like I'm sure if I meet her now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, I was just being dramatic when I was a middle schooler. But at the time, I think the environment for who I was when I was 12 wasn't conducive to like the way that I learn or acquire information.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't say science was like an interest in middle school, high school either. Like, okay, I just have terrible experience with like science teachers, I guess. But like in high
Oh, no.
school, which is unfortunate, you know, but in high school, I took like an AP bio class. It was terrible. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say it was necessarily like only the teacher, like, but also me. Like, at that time in my life, there was a lot of things happening, like just personal, like family stuff. So my focus wasn't really all there. You know, like you're developing as a person. You're like in your what like angsty years.
Yeah.
um and like I was an athlete, I was a student, like trying to keep my grades up, and AP bio just really kicked my ass, to be honest. Like I got a 1 on that AP exam,
Oh.
so I was just traumatized. I'm like, I'm not good at science. Like I just built all these like limiting beliefs, and these like my mentality around science was just negative. So then you know, moving on with chemistry. Like I never really liked chemistry in high school, but then it was in college when everything sort of changed. Um, I was undeclared when I first started college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was just like the next step. Um, and I feel like a lot of people. I went to this school. My high school was Bravo Francisco Bravo Medical Magnet High School. So like it was a magnet school, like a school in which a lot of kids went that didn't live near there. Like it was a
Mhm.
school that people like your parents make you go here. So a lot of people like go to college after that. So like I thought it was the natural thing for me to do. Like you go to college after. So I did, and I went through like the whole GE, like the general education courses, and I was really like also digging deep because, I had this like timeline on myself. Like, okay, I have to declare a major at the end of this year. I have to figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life when I'm 18.
Yeah.
I have like this weird like deadline that I had for my life, I guess, or at least, I mean, college, it's like a big thing because not college itself, but like you have to pay for it if you don't get grants. Like you want to make sure that you're making like an okay decision at least.
Mm.
Um, and so when I went through my general education courses, I was really attentive of like I kept a journal, like whatever like stood out to me, like maybe this is what I meant to do with my life. Like I was just really cognizant, really alert of what classes like stood out to me. I took a biology course my second semester and I was just fascinated. I'm a very curious person. I love knowing like what is the reason why things happen. Like I like knowing the core of things. And I just remember like in this biology course, like we were talking about vitamin C or something, I don't know. And like how it's actually a placebo, how vitamin C doesn't actually increase your immunity and things like that. Like people just take these pills. Like it helps because you think it's helping, right? Like the whole placebo effect. And then we talked about like this other concept and like really getting into like the molecular reasons as to why it's happening. And I thought that was so cool. I'm like, wait, so you mean to tell me like this is why this larger thing is happening? Like is operating like because of this one thing that's happening in this one cell, and then that's able to be coordinated with other nearby cells. You're telling me that like the way everything orchestrates is why I'm speaking right now. Like that was just really fascinating to me. Like how each cell is its own little universe and like it creates a larger universe, which is you. And like we're just all like little walking universes. Like that's how universes, that's how I always saw it. So anyway, like yeah, obviously I really nerded out about that.
Right. I love that. I love that.
It's like ridiculous. I'm just like sometimes I'm like, how do I sound to someone that's not interested in this at all? They're probably like, she's crazy. Who is
N-
she?
no, it's fascinating because I mean, I use kind of similar vocabulary when I talk about people in general. Like when I come across a different person, it's just like it's just a whole different universe. Like you have your own universe, and you're trying to clash and like try to like communicate like whatever small thing you want to communicate. But it's a clashing of so many different factors. And
Yeah,
I one
definitely.
question I did have about that, because of your experience in like all the previous science courses and in bio classes, like how were like how was your like attitude like signing up for that class even like prior, like didn't you have any
I
kind of
pushed
negative?
it. I pushed it to second semester because I was like, so my thought process for like, I overthink everything. I'm just like a big overthinker and I plan everything. And so I really planned my first year accordingly, like according to where my mindset was at, right? So like I told myself, okay, I'm going to take a biology course my second semester because I don't want to start my college career with that. And I don't want to push it till later when I'm taking like major course because you still had to take that biology course regardless of what
Mm.
major I decided because it's just like a GE. And I was like, okay, if I take this biology course later when I'm taking major courses, that's gonna suck. I'm gonna hate my life. So I'm just gonna take it my second semester. So like to answer your question, I was terrified. I was just like, I had built up such like a negative like relationship between me and science. And it's crazy because science is like an umbrella term for so many things, right? But
Right.
the way that I just like shut myself out to like the possibilities of what I could potentially pursue within science because of these negative experiences that like I had previously with like it wasn't like necessarily like I hate blaming other people and it, it's I don't think it was necessarily like my teachers, although it did play a part. I think it was just before that, like before even like I feel like in my head I had already made up an idea that I wasn't the type of person that was good at science.
Hmm.
Like just it wasn't really emphasized like in our communities, like I would growing up in East LA, it's like a historically um like a lower income community, which we were, community of like immigrant families, which what my family was. Like my parents are immigrants to the United States from Mexico. So I feel like along the way I picked up voices telling me like, oh, because you fall under this identity group, like you're not going to be good at this. And it wasn't like
Mm,
anyone necessarily telling me, but I feel like you hear things like maybe because there's so much extra help and emphasis on like, oh, you must get to like a STEM thing because you're Latina, because you're like, I feel like sometimes that in its own made me feel like, oh crap, is there a reason why I otherwise wouldn't be able to? So I don't even think it's the fact that I wasn't ever capable. It's just like these voices that, or the implications of certain voices that sort of you develop ideas of like, maybe I'm not like good for this because of like where I live or whatever, which I think obviously isn't the case, but along the way, you just sort of pick up like these ideas, that aren't
right.
necessarily true. So, yeah, I guess like that definitely, like that mindset at the time, probably didn't know that it was limiting me. But
Hmm.
now, like when you look back and you're able to define certain aspects of your childhood and like your, like prior experiences, like I feel like now I'm able to define potentially why I thought that I wasn't like good at science,
You know,
you know?
I love that because it feels like I'm well. There's something that I'm noticing, at least, like your mindset, like your ability to analyze like yourself and like the states, like the things that affect you, the things that influence you, and like to have, because it's different from like when you're just going through something and you're just trying to figure out like why you're feeling this way and like stuff like that. But it seems like you have like a more of a bird's eye, a little bit more of a bird's eye view about like how, like why like your life um kind of like why you felt the way you did, like why you made the decisions you did.
Mm.
I think that's really interesting. It's like a lot of psychology stuff. Like
Yeah.
so was that like a recent thing or like throughout like um I guess learning about yourself, the process of like
Mm.
understanding yourself a little bit. Um
Yeah.
was that like mostly recently?
I would say I'm a very introspective I feel like part of it has to do with my personality. Like I I okay, to answer your question, recently I became more in touch with it. But
Mm.
I think that I've always had this like way of thinking about things that's so like annoying sometimes because I feel like sometimes I overthink things and I try to like look at thing like a deeper explanation for things, and it's really fun and like in terms of it allows for really awesome conversations, but sometimes it like the drawbacks of that are that I'm such an overthinker. And but just to like before I elaborate on that part, the positives of it are that yeah, I think I just like understanding like why I'm behaving a certain way or why I'm thinking certain thoughts. And so like sometimes I try to explore like why I think I'm in the process of unlearning a lot of things that I learned as a child or as I navigated through life. I mean, I'm still young, but like as a younger adult, I'm trying to understand why I chose certain paths that I did or why I have the mentality that I do. And a lot of it has to do with, picking up ideas from when we're kids or how we were raised, the environment that we grew up in, like our environment really shapes us. So yeah, I feel like I've always been this way, but as of late, like recently, at least I know like a lot of people say this, but COVID really did allow a lot of us to slow down and have a time to look within. And I, previous to that, I was always going, going, going. Like I'm very much a person that sees, like I have huge task lists and like all these goals, and I'm always like in go mode. And it's good, but sometimes it doesn't allow you to slow down and analyze like how you even feel about the current state of your life. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I definitely would say yes to answer your question. It has been a recent thing that I'm paying attention to, like the potential reasons of why I do certain things or did certain things in the past.
Right. That's really cool. That's a really cool kind of skill to have, because if you don't have it, then I guess you're just more prone to, well, one, you're farther from understanding the truth of what actually happened in your life, and the farther you are from that truth, the harder it is for you to just make good decisions for yourself, and I guess to make peace a little bit with who you are.
Yeah, I think that inner voice, it's important that we listen to it, because a lot of times, like it like when we listen to it, like our intuition or like our consciousness, whatever you want to call it, it a lot of times it tells us when we're aligned to what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if you've ever felt this feeling of resistance to what you're currently doing, whether it's your occupation, whether it's like a relationship you have. Like, sometimes there's just this huge resistance, and we can, lie to ourselves, or we can try to justify why we're sticking through it. We can make up stories and convince our own selves to stay or to pursue or to continue down this path. But if you don't like take the time to really listen to that, you're going to keep walking toward a path that you're not necessarily content with. And sometimes you do have to, do things that you hate in order to get you to where you want to be. I've done that. And, I will probably do that again to get me to where I want to be, to get to that like ultimate end goal. But there's so many ways to get there, right? To like that goal that you have set for yourself. Like, and sometimes like once you achieve that goal, which is what happened with me, right? Like, I so badly in my head like had created this idea that I wanted to like pursue my PhD. I never even asked myself why, which is why like I firmly believe that when it came to writing my essays for graduate school, it was so difficult because you really have to dissect like your life and your motives as to why you want to pursue. And I love to write, but that process was so incredibly difficult because I had to like really like embellish the truth a little bit and convince myself that this is not embellish the truth in the sense that like I'm lying about what I've done or what I'm capable of, but more so like, okay, why do you want your PhD? And then I'm writing things like, oh, I want to have my own lab one day and like this. And like that wasn't, no, Ellie, like what are you doing? Like that's not what you want. But like you want to get in because of whatever reason. And like at this point during this like writing process, I really had a chance to dig deep, but also like at that particular time, something that I learned, it's really hard to differentiate when like whether you really want to achieve something, and it's fear stopping you versus um like you trying to sabotage yourself. So for example, like just to give an example of what I mean, because I don't know if that made sense. When I like was leaving for my PhD,
Mm-hmm.
I had all these feelings of like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to go. Like, but then I told myself, oh, maybe you're just afraid of failure. Maybe you're just afraid that you're not good enough. Maybe you are afraid of imposter syndrome. So then I'm like, okay, you're right. You're right, mind. Like, I'm just afraid, like, I'm trying to sabotage myself. So it's really hard to
Mm.
differentiate between you just are letting fear get in the way versus I really don't want this, which is why I think I had to go. I had to go to prove to myself, like, you really were only letting fear get in your head. Look, it's like fine, you're surviving. Versus what I actually found out was like, yeah, there were portions that were like obviously fear and you're like getting in the way. But a lot of it was like, hey, you really don't want this. Um, but like sometimes you can't afford to be in that environment to like realize that you don't want it. Sometimes you have to do that deep digging before you put yourself in that environment because in my situation, it didn't they my PhD program paid me, right?
Mm.
But say for example, medical school, that'll be a very expensive first year of you trying to figure out. So like what I'm trying to say with all of this is it really is important to, before you go on your path, really dig deep and identify your why, and um, identify whether, okay, this is your why, is this the only way that you can get there, and choose a path of least resistance is like my biggest learning lesson this past like year and a half.
That is so fascinating because I can relate so much to that personal statement. At least because I'm currently doing a personal statement at the moment.
Mm.
Because I'm current, like my background is I got my bachelor's in nutrition.
Oh, how cool.
So the funnily enough, when you said that the bio and the cell thing and the vitamin C stuff, I was also undeclared in high school. I'm not high school, college, undeclared in college, and then I came across this intro to nutrition class, and I well for me I love science, but I knew I wanted to go into something sciencey, but I just couldn't. I didn't have anything in particular until I came across the nutrition class, and when the professor was going over something like the thing that got me was how food is related to um the top 10 like killers, like the mortality, the reasons, like the top 10 reasons why people die. I think like 8 out of the 10 are food related.
Heart
And
disease is number one, right, for the US?
yeah,
Or is it
it's I
cancer?
haven't looked at the chart in a long time, but it's like yeah, cardiovascular disease, car crashes are actually on the top 10. Funnily enough, that's not nutrition related, but diabetes, obesity, so just some of these you know kidney failures, and just all of these conditions are food related. And so
Mm.
when I saw that stat, and also other, and how, like, because food is ultimately like the fuel that you put into your body, that
Yes.
goes into, that actually breaks down and actually creates your cells. um Once I found that out, I was just super interested in nutrition. um so right now I'm applying to like the internships to become like the the professional expert, like the dietitian, the registered dietitian is what they call it. So I'm working on my internships, and that damn personal statement on the first question they ask is, why do you want to enter the dietetics profession? And I've been spending like weeks on that question because I really, like you said, you have to dig deep.
Oh yeah.
And I've heard other students also like, um, they have their version, but then for me, um, I, I just have to like really, I try to be genuine, and I really try to dig deep for that reason. But it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it is because like, and it's meant to be hard, right? Because I feel that we aren't really, we don't ask ourselves that, right? Like for example, even like some people do, some people go through college with the idea like, oh, I know why I'm doing this, I know what I want to get out of it. But a lot of us don't. A lot of us just go through it because it's like the next traditional step,
Exactly.
whatever. um but we don't really put much thought. Like we think, oh, it'll be worth it once it's done. And like that's how I went through my whole college career. Like I mean I obviously did put thought into the future, and like also I don't regret like what I chose. I think every decision is necessary, right? Like you need like not okay, you learn, it's like a teachable moment, you learn from that. And most people have a zigzag weird windy path life anyway. Like it's weird when you see a straight shot life, like someone did the thing, and if they did, like who's to say they're happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I definitely, like, you're going through the process, so you know what I mean. Like you really have to um, learn yourself, like really ask yourself hard questions. And the frustrating thing about it is that it's not something you can like determine overnight. Like at least for from my experience, I can say that in different moments you like capture like a new motive, a new reason why you want to do what you're doing. It's
Ex-
not an overnight thing, it's a process.
right. I think that's a perfect segue then. So then, so then your transition from the main focus of the PhD in the microbiome to I guess like your current life and like what you decided, you kind of wanted to transition into.
What the hell are you doing now, Ellie?
No, 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 no,
um,
no.
yeah, so I mean, that's definitely a good segue. So, in terms of the biology aspect, I'm still exercising that through my startup, my job at the startup. But I realized something interesting during my um, when I left graduate school. It was at like what May of 2020, so the peak, like COVID was like real, like it's real now, but that's when we were all like panicking, like, oh my God,
Yeah,
what's happening?
toilet paper running out.
Yeah, like what? Well, even was that phase. But yeah, so I think, I read so many books during that period. So I like to call it my incubation period because I really like disconnected from like the ideas that I had of my life. Like it's like to the best of my abilities, I created this blank slate and I told myself, what would you design out of your life? Like if this was your second chance, like what would you do now? And it became really evident to me like I had to leave my PhD program, wasn't what I wanted. And that in itself was a hard decision, because I had so many people to tell, like previous mentors. I had to tell the people that like whose labs I was rotating in. I had to tell my advisors. It was this big thing, and a lot of people. It's like the hardest thing to tell someone that you don't want to like what they've accomplished for themselves, that you don't want that for yourself. It's so hard, like telling a professor like I don't. You have to play your cards nicely, right? Like you don't want to burn any bridges, and it's like it's a personal decision because some people like could take it personally, not like I didn't experience that, but in my mind it was just like this huge monster of like telling the people that I had to tell. And obviously everyone was questioning like, do you want to leave? Like you work so hard to get to Berkeley, and like Berkeley has all this prestige, and like do you want to walk away from that? And like I was so sure. I was like, yes, like I do. Like there was no doubt in my mind. And then I just read so many books. I really dove into more like mindset, like motivational self-help books, financial books. I've always been really interested in like having my finances like in a row. Um, I think it has to do a lot with like we didn't grow up with a lot of money, and like there was a lot of like financial like struggles that we like my family went through. And I wouldn't say that I ever needed anything, but I know my parents struggled. Like parents have this way, like some parents have this way of even though you grow up poor, their children will never feel it. And I feel like that's how it was for me. Like we just had a very like humble upbringing, but that's all we knew. So we're not complaining. Like whatever, we can't make these crazy trips every year that my friends are doing. Like it's fine. Like I had a bunch of cousins anyway to like play with. Um, but I think because like I grew up with that those financial burdens, like I always wanted to keep my finances good, like straight. So I read a lot of financial books, which is led me to like this crazy like path that I'm on now to like achieve financial independence. So just to talk a little bit about like my side hustles, actually, you know what, I'll get into that a little bit just to like really talk more about my incubation phase. So yeah, man, I just like read so many books about mindset and entrepreneurship, and how like a lot of people just had these like successful people had multiple streams of income. So I became fascinated because I'm over here trying to like pursue a career to just have that job till I retire. Like my mindset just shifted drastically as to like the traditional way of like viewing your life of like, you go to college, you go to grad school, you get a job, you get promotions. Like I just didn't envision myself in that like rat race environment. I just didn't want that. And so that sort of led me to, okay, well, what do you want to do? And that's when I started like, I'm very creative. I have like I have creativity in me that I would like to like express in different ways. So that's when I had like started my podcast back in the day. So I was doing what you're doing, very similar. I was reaching out to people that I knew and that I didn't know and just capturing their creative journey. I was specifically focusing more on people with creative paths, but actually
Mm-hmm.
like or people that like started that took a non-traditional path with their life at some
Mm.
point, because I feel like a lot of those stories aren't really captured. You know, we hear the like very traditional path and like everything like within academia and this and that, but we don't hear, or like corporate world, but we don't hear the other side, like the people that took a chance on their own like side hustles, on their own entrepreneurial endeavors. Like that was fascinating because that's fear. Like I mean, that's not the only way to experience fear, but when you really have to like risk, like you have no money, you're gonna like take your chances on this thing that you think may lead you somewhere, but there's no security.
Mm-hmm.
That's so fascinating to me. So I started capturing people's creative path, and it took me down this like weird, super interesting, weird is a wrong word, path to like discovering how I can do something with my side hustles, how like with my hobbies, with things I already like. How can I leverage things I already like to make income out of that, or to make anything out of that? So after that, that's when I started exploring more of like financial independence. So I'm trying to like find a way to categorize this so it's not too messy. I think I'll go first with like the real estate aspect, because due to my interest in financial independence, financial freedom,
Mm-hmm.
I joined like a real estate mastermind group because I was very interested in having some assets under my name that I can, you know, be a landlord or in the future have my own Airbnb. So I joined this mastermind group and met really awesome people, networked, and I was able to buy my first. My partner and I were able to buy our first out of state
Mm-hmm.
investment property. So you know that's nothing that's going to make us rich like in the next year or whatever. It's like more long term. Like this is something that over time is going to be appreciating and building. Like that'll just be a source of passive income. And just to stay within the topic of real estate, now what I'm exploring is to launch my own Airbnb. I recently started a course, so some of my friends recommended this course that really helps you like launch your own Airbnb without owning property. So maybe like
Mm-hmm.
co-hosting or subleasing, and they're doing really good. Like
Mm-hmm.
just the cash flow that's coming in is really good. So I was like, you know what, whatever, like let me give this a go. So that's my current endeavor, is really like finding ways to um like learn more and launch that so that can be another stream of income. And the reason I like want like why, so the question you can ask is like, well, why do you want all this? I think I know for a fact that I don't want to work a 9 to 5 for the rest of my life. I don't want to be an employee for the rest of my life. And I know that if children are in the cards for me, are in my cards, I guess, like I don't want to like my mom struggled so much with like finding people to take care of us because she had to go like slave away at a job. She like my mom was so good at like being in our lives, but like with my dad, like he always had to be working to support our house, right? And like the cost of living in California, and like just I don't want to experience that. Like I want to be present in my children's lives. I want to be present in like the lives of my current family, like my mom. Like we're very family oriented. Like I want to invest more time in relationships and people and like other endeavors that don't involve like me having a 9 to 5 in the long run. So that's my why. And in terms of like my other, that's more of like the real estate aspect of me. And in terms of other side hustles, so how you found me through my page, I believe, and we can all, I'm actually curious as to how you found me, so we can get into that in a bit. But um, yeah, so I currently, what I do with my page is I recently pivoted to more like documenting my side hustle journey, because it's hard. It's like so many moving parts, and I know there's people out there that are doing it too. So sort of capturing my journey and providing tips to like how to be productive in your business, maybe different tech tips of like, okay, how Do you set up a website? How do you set up your Google Drive for your business? How do you leverage different tech tools to automate parts of your business? So really anything that comes with like what I'm currently using in my business to like have it being functional and like hands off for the most part, to like mindset. Like I just want like to cover all of those topics.
Mm-hmm.
So I was also providing more like content. I like strategy things, so I was providing a lot of content strategy tips, and I currently still am, and sort of like foundational. Oh, my mic is okay, there we go. And just sort of like providing people with like direction, perhaps in their business if they need it, like foundational questions that you can be asking yourselves. Um, but yeah, I think I was working more like with clients on, getting their social media page for their business, um, like up to par with their brand, like the brand aesthetics that they had in mind, copywriting for their captions or for blogs or for any other content writing for any other piece of content that they come up with. So I was doing more of that in the prior months, but this month, specifically July, because there's so many things that are happening with like the real estate aspect, I'm shifting more to like working less with clients right now, to like
Mm-hmm.
just continuing to provide tips and sharing my journey as I go through it.
Cool. Quick question on those like those content clients. How did you like get around to like getting involved in that? Was it just, I guess, being in like the online space and then?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so actually, one of my friends, she started her own shop sometime last year, and I was helping her with her Instagram page and just like different back end stuff of her job, of
Mhm.
her business. And I realized I didn't know people got paid for things like that. Like before this,
Mm.
I had no idea of the online space of like providing like a service to other businesses, like whether it's a one-off service or working with them on a monthly package to set up different aspects of their. I didn't setting up different aspects of their business. I
Wow.
didn't know that you like that existed.
Yeah.
And the reason I came across this is because one day she was figuring out how she could pay me, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, like if you want to have me as a tax write-off, I got into like the legal side of it. I started doing research, and that's where I learned that people got paid for like
Oh.
this type of work, like whether it's helping people with their social media, helping people with their YouTube, helping with copywriting for a blog, helping with any of those like back end aspects of business. I didn't know you can get paid for that. So that's when I learned more about like being like whether it's a virtual assistant or being a content strategist or being like a website developer. That's when I really tapped into and started doing more research. And that's when I decided to like just have that building on the side and work with different clients to meet different needs. Cause I know like a lot of people talk about niching down, but I feel like in the beginning, you sometimes have to like play around with different aspects of um, like whatever it is you're exploring. You have to play around with different aspects until you can find what you like. It's definitely a process. So that's sort of like a short, like there's more to it, but that's just like the main way as to how I became exposed to this. And of course, like having these podcasts with creatives really exposed me to just really making money with your side hustle, with your hobbies, I mean, with things you already like. You hear this all the time, but it just seemed like something so far away, like I could never do. And then once I realized, hey, like Ellie, you love planning. I love being organized. I love systems and strategies. I love finding ways to like automate things and like I love all these organizational aspects. I didn't know that I could, you know, leverage that to help businesses. So yeah, it's just really being more exposed to creative people and entrepreneurial type minds.
That is super cool. Connecting all the way back to like when you were younger, and when you loved like the arts. I can definitely see that in in your content that you produce. And also like just the like you said, the website design, like the things at least come across. Like I'm like, yeah, that looks really nice. Like the website designs and the stuff that you have on your Instagram, like and your reels, and it's like I like how that all connects. It seems like it's just very like genuine and like very Ellie, like
Thank
you know.
you. You know that, well, first of all, thank you. Like I'm very flattered that like I always wonder how other people perceive me, like people that see me on the internet. And obviously every single person is going to have a different perspective or perception, but it's good to know that like, you can see the element of me in my content. It's definitely a struggle to incorporate that.
Hmm.
I'm sure like you can probably relate, or other people that put out content, and it's hard to put yourself out there, to be honest. So I'm glad that you were able to take away pieces of my personality. But like, just to mention something really quick,
Hmm.
I also really love teaching. I love connecting with people. And I'm still trying to learn more about myself every day, but part of me thinks that that's why I wanted to pursue my PhD to begin with, is because I wanted to be a professor. Like I wanted to teach. I don't want like the research, like all the weird administrative, like I just really wanted to connect with people, with students, the way that like I had amazing college professors that really were mentors, really, more than anything. Like of course I took a lot from their classes, but it's what happened in office hours. It's what happened, um, like how the extra mile that they went to help me on my way, on my journey, whatever it was at that given time. But I always loved being a mentor. I used to be like a mentor for, when I was in college, I was a mentor to other college students at the nearby community college. I was a tutor. I always loved connecting with people and teaching. And like I started my new YouTube channel recently. And that's one of the things that I love about the online space, is like you can really teach anything you want, and you can really get out there and like, with very minimal equipment. Like I mean, yeah, I have this mic now, but when I first started, like it was just like a mic that I plugged into my phone, and like I just recorded on there, and I was putting out like uh YouTube videos. Like I don't have that channel anymore, but like that channel will reflect like I was just tapping into, I would have so many like different videos that didn't even relate to one another, but that was my journey. Like a lot of times people put pressure on like being perfect, or like getting like your path down the first time, or like if you chose this you have to stick with it. And yeah, there's like, you can say a lot about consistency, like definitely be consistent and be committed. Like you don't want to be jumping around too much, but sometimes getting to like me getting to where I am now, it took a year of me tapping into different things. Like I had a podcast. I started doing like more YouTube videos on productivity. I was putting out videos on how to be productive, which I mean, I still plan on doing because I'm a nerd about productivity. But like before that, it was just, oh, like I made this planner template because I love making planner templates. Like I have one right now that I made. It's just like a habit tracker. Like I love making these things. So I was like just making tutorials on YouTube. Like it was just me allowing myself to be creative. I wasn't thinking about making a job out of this, making money out of this yet. It was just, sometimes we focus so much on getting it right the first time that we don't take time to explore. And my path over the last year, I've tried everything. I've I built a coffee table, and like I documented like I just tapped into so many things, like, you know, cutting that table with the miter saw and painting it. And like, you don't, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be something you stick with forever. At one point you definitely want to zone in on one thing. You don't want to like spread yourself too thin, but sometimes I feel like it's part of the process, unless you already are super in touch with who you are and what you want. But not a lot of people are like that. A lot of times it's trial and error that finally gets you to like the next phase that you're committed to, you know?
Right, and I I agree. It's a super important step to first, explore. Like because we
Explore.
we are such complex like creatures,
Hmm.
and it we I think we hardly do ever know ourselves because I feel like we are so busy just living our day to day that
Oh yeah.
we hardly ask those questions of why and like who am I and like what values do I are important to me and how do I want to how do I want to live my life so I can live a life following those values.
Yeah.
um and I want to say that it was really brave of you to like that whole process of leaving the PhD. Like like that's not an easy thing to do because you know um whenever you make any sort of like decision that takes a couple that takes time, like you said, there's like that whole like are you sabotaging yourself
Mhm.
section that's really, I mean, that's just um that really is psychologically like painful, like to kind of like try to discern what is truth.
Yeah. And you know what really helped me, and I would recommend to anyone that's experiencing like similar feelings of whatever your occupation or whatever you're questioning in your life. Something that really helped me was to keep a journal. And I mean, I still do, like, I still journal every day. That's one of my habits that I have on here. um, but during my graduate like experience, I kept a journal, and every time that I would feel negative emotions or happy emotions, like when I had a mild, like it wasn't all bad. Like my graduate like experience, I didn't leave because I had a negative experience with like a professor or a student or the program. It was personal. Like it had nothing to do with the program. And like I was keeping like this journal of like the happy moments, like when things went great in lab, when like I overcame feelings of imposter syndrome, whenever I had like even the slightest accomplishments, like I would just document everything. But something that came to my attention was a lot of it was negative. And when you have to reset your mindset every single day, because I kid you not, I came to a point where like I just didn't want to go to lab. I didn't want to get out of bed. I've experienced depression before when I was in college. Um, and I am very alert when I start feeling so like I know what like potential emotions could feel like because it's not just sadness, it's like deeper than that. It's like this deep sense of like lack of meaning or it's like beyond lack of motivation. I can't really explain it. If you've ever experienced or if anyone watching has experienced, like they would know. But like I was starting to feel a lot of that again, and it
Mhm.
was scary. And a lot of times, and the thing is like a lot of people were like, oh well, you're far away from your family, like, but the thing is like for research I was usually always traveling. Like I did 2 summer internships in Houston, Texas, in Baylor College of Medicine. And so I was in the like Texas Medical Center, and that required me to be away from my family. A lot of the summers I left, I had lived away from my like house for a lot of college. Like I love my family, but it was already like the precedent was set of like she leaves, like she goes away. I've always been very independent. So it's like, yeah, of course I'm homesick, but I'm in Berkeley, Northern California. My family is in Southern California. They're a drive away or like an hour flight away. Like that was a non-issue. It was deeper. It wasn't it was about me and what I wanted out of life. So I really recommend like just keeping a journal for anyone experience, like just in general, like even if you're in a good place in your life, it's good to keep that. But especially in those dark moments. And when I flipped back and I'm looking over here because my journal, like the same journal is here that I still like journal in. um it's I looked back to reflect on my months, and it's like, hey, like there's something here like I need to listen to. But I wasn't able to see that until COVID hit because I right, everything slowed down. Before that, it's like you gotta go. You wake up because the next day you have to set up this experiment. You get home, you have to study for this class. Next day, you have to write this paper. Like you don't have time. You don't have time to stop. And that's terrifying, right? Because that's how people go their entire life sometimes with their career. Like it's so demanding and blah, blah, blah. And then one day you finally have a chance to breathe, and it's like 10 years later, and you're like, hold up. Like, how did I end up here? So yeah, that was just my experience, and for sure like having that journal helped me um keep track of those thoughts.
I see. Yeah, that's really cool. That you're able to do that, like for yourself. Notice that about yourself, and to take action,
Definitely.
according to that, to the information available to you. Um, so what do you kind of see, like, as a future? Like, what do you think? Because you did mention a little bit on the future, like what you kind of wanted for yourself a little bit. Did you have like a more, I guess, to what is your idea for your future? I guess.
Yeah. Great question. Loaded question.
Yeah.
But great question. I At the beginning of this year, my partner and like I mentioned earlier, I'm a big planner. I freak out if I don't have a to-do list for my day. Some may say it's excessive. That's how I function. Like my mind, like I can't I have a very short attention span. I have trouble focusing. I need like order. And that's my way of implementing order. So, having said that, and at the start of this year, I actually sat down and I made a general 10-year plan and 5-year plan and 1-year plan. I feel like my entire life I've been operating in this like mindset of like just the day to day, which is a good mindset to have, only when that day to day is being guided by something bigger. I never had that. I never had direction. I knew that I had to finish college because there was grad school or like a job, but I didn't have like an idea of what even kind of job. And this is not to say like you need to plan your life to a T, but we need general direction. I never did that for myself. I never like thought that I had to. And so now, like having navigated through my life in a very like just organized way, I guess, I decided to like sit down and really think about what it like because it comes a time in your life where you need to really like be careful as to what you're investing your time and effort in and what can get you the like highest return of investment. So and that return can be different things. It doesn't have to be money. So I sat down and I was like, okay, what do I want? So something that I definitely like for sure is in my 5-year plan is I want to achieve financial independence. So meaning that I want my side hustles to be able to sustain my lifestyle and then some. I want to hopefully have children by then. I want to hopefully be married by then. And I want to have, so that's in terms of personal. And in terms of like professional, I want to, with this side hustle that I have of like being a content strategist and just helping other people, providing tips for other people um, to like be more efficient in their business. Like I am currently still developing that because this is very something very new in my life. Like within the last year, this year actually. So it's still not like set in stone. That's still, I know it's going to evolve, but I really want to have an online course by the end of this year. That's one of my goals. I'm still brainstorming as to what that's going to be, but I definitely want to teach more in like any capacity that I can through like the virtual world. And yeah, I think from that, like really leveraging different like using my interests that I have right now and things that I'm good at to build a sustainable business in 5 years from now. And so those are just a couple like I actually have this like 5-year plan on my fridge right now. um but the main thing is just yeah like for sure like the person that I want to be as well is someone that really nurtures their family. Like, so when I look ahead, I for sure have this idea of me just having a close knit relationships with my family and involving them in anything that I can, spending time with them. So, like, that is for sure, like, family is a big thing on my 5-year plan. Um, and yeah, I think it's just really leveraging my side hustles to grow into something bigger, both this online business that I have as well as my real estate, and whatever new endeavors I take on 5 years from now. And yeah, I think it's ultimately about finding balance. So another thing that I really want to get better at is just like working more on my routines. So, like the morning routines, the workout routines. I really want to be this person that incorporates these elements of balance. I don't like, I'm not out here just chasing the money. I'm not like, the reason I want those things is to be able to afford myself time freedom to invest it into the things and people that I truly care about.
I love that. I love that ending, especially the emphasis on balance. To be like a whole person. I because it, like you said, like when you follow your values, your intuition and like that feeling inside like just aligns very well. And we do have a lot of values. Family's important, and I think that our financial situation is important. And you know also you mentioned like teaching and sharing this information with other people also brings you joy in your life.
Yeah.
So finding a way to do all those things, I can see a person living their best life is how
Yes.
I guess I would put it. A life of balance.
Yeah.
So that is super cool. I know that I feel like there's something like there, especially like with your the way that you operate, the way that you plan things out, the way that you're able to communicate your ideas to other people. I could definitely see like your page like blowing up, like your YouTube like channel blowing up because the way that I was describing you and this podcast episode to some of my friends was that I love how people when they're first starting out and they don't have that they're not too big yet in terms of like the online presence, but I see like the mindset, I see the potential, I see the um I don't know, the underdog, like to make good
Hmm.
content despite like just starting out like and not having too many like followers yet. So that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
this is really cool because I can get kind of like document like the early stage
Yes.
of your journey here because
Yeah.
I know that you'll connect with a lot of people, and a lot of people are gonna get a lot of value from like watching and reading your content.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean that's all I would hope. It's kind of like really putting yourself in a situation where you are uncomfortable because honestly, like for me, I have my like personal Instagram page and all of that and like YouTube, but I'm like it's still, and I wouldn't say I'm like extroverted. I'm definitely more like in the middle. I have like a lot of introverted tendencies. Like I'm definitely more of a like, because being introverted just means you gain energy from your own self. um and the reason I say I'm in the middle is because there's definitely a time, like I'm a social creature, we all are. There's a time where like I need someone else's like frequency, someone else's energy to feed off of, to
Hmm.
like motivate me. But I feel like with this like entire online space, definitely becoming comfortable with being in the public eye and having strangers see you, because I mean that's how you found me. But I
Hmm.
mean ultimately I just really want to provide value to people. And it's not even about like, I don't have a lot of followers and stuff. And it's interesting because when you first start out, like, which I did really recently start out, you're very much aware of like the metrics, like the new followers and stuff. And I feel like before, when I had like my previous channel, because I was doing it, like obviously you always want your channel to grow because at one point you can monetize from that, but also because you want to be reaching like other people. Um, but because I started out in the online world, without the intentions of making anything out. It was just me being creative. It sort of set the stage for me to like, now that I'm starting, like I'm not going to lie and say, oh, like these vanity metrics don't matter to me, because like they matter to most of us, right? But I wouldn't say it's like what mainly matters. It's just more of like I'm documenting my journey. And this is a very recent thing that I recently started saying, like, hey, I'm just gonna capture more of the elements of what I'm going through, because like those human elements, those moments of like trial and error, those moments of the process are the essence of life itself, right? Like it's about those day-to-day things that are getting you to like the end goal. And it's scary to document that because you don't know what the end goal is. Like you don't know what the end result is. You don't know if you're going to be successful. um but it's very like, when you see that, when I see people documenting the process and then they actually achieve that, it makes it more realistic that I can achieve that because I saw their process, as opposed to someone that's already successful. You're less relatable, first and foremost, but also there's always the like doubt in the back of your head, like, well, obviously this person achieved it because they're already so successful. Like it's just so much harder to see yourself also get there, if that makes sense.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely aim at like putting out more like informative content and just little pieces of like me, which I'm glad are getting across.
M- Most definitely. Yeah. Yeah, like I think you hit it right on, about how you are more relatable just because you do start from that whole like just like, reading books to like, starting like, from this one place, have and then like having this Instagram and the side hustle and like, this documenting your whole journey through that. I'm a lot of people are gonna connect with that, like I said. The funny thing about the introvert thing, I would also like, for the longest of time, I feel like I was a very big introvert, at least growing up. I was always, by myself. And
Yeah.
but at some point I was just I knew that this whole interest in other people's stories was just such a I know that when I'm in the zone with something, like it's just like my whole being is like here. Like I'm just
Yeah.
like really there's just something about it that I learn something. Like I get to appreciate um you know the life of this other individual, because it wasn't easy at all to know that life is full of suffering and you know just tragedies everywhere occurs in people's lives. But despite all that, people find a way to bring a positive impact in the world, if they
Yeah.
manifest that energy correctly. So I'm always very appreciative when I see that, and I see that here.
Oh,
So
thank you. Well, likewise, I feel like with your page too, what you're doing, it's beyond just the conversation that you have with individuals. It's like, other people like that are listening and watching, and you never know who needs to be listening or watching that particular piece of content that you're putting out, and how impactful it may be in the lives of other people. And yeah, definitely like connecting with people that perhaps don't have similar life paths as you, but that have similar mindset. I understand what you mean. Like I've always felt so energized and just remotivated to take on anything after I had my podcasts with people. Um, because it's like, it's true, life is suffering and there's so many things that could go wrong and so many ways that you yourself can make life worse than it is. But the fact that people every day are making the choice to make something of themselves and better themselves and strive, like it's no small feat. And really like understanding that you have a larger impact than you think you do. Like by you I mean you, but like in general, you people, like you have a larger impact, to like more of an impact than you know that you have. So for me, when I realized that like I'm just like a node in like a network of people, and if I like improve my life, if I create opportunities for others, if I am on this journey for like striving to be a better person, whatever it may be, that's going, people are watching it, and people are directly, um, people directly benefit from that, but also indirectly. So yeah, I mean, just a message for whoever's like listening and really like hesitant right now in their life, or not knowing whether they can go, like a lot of times we have this idea where we want to be, but it's just fear, like maybe stopping us from getting there. And yeah, just encouraging people to put yourself out of your comfort zone for the sake of really pursuing the things that align with you. And it's just one of the things that you feel. And if you're currently in a path of a lot of resistance, like really try to rethink that, to like reroute. Like there's nothing wrong with rerouting. That is what life is about, you know. And just really taking that leap of faith. It's terrifying, but if you connect yourself with the proper individuals, like with people that get it, um like people are willing to help, is what I've learned. A lot of times like I like doing things on my own, but I really learned like putting myself out there, voicing what I want, voicing what I need, voicing what I could give to others, like you're going to be okay, you know? And that's just been like the biggest lesson for me, is really allowing myself to see beyond the fear and just go with what feels right. And I always say, like, I don't mean in like the hippy dippy type of way. I mean in like the way that you're setting yourself up for like a better future, something that's like long lasting, not feels right in like the temporary, like transient way. No, something that feels right, but that will continue to feel right beyond that moment. I think like pursuing that, I think you'll will take you to a path that you're perhaps more content with than like the one that you're currently at, if you're in that like rough phase right now.
That was a beautiful, beautiful way to phrase that. Definitely, to anyone that's listening, I mean, that's, I'm sure, that's inspired a lot of people. Um, yeah. Oh man. Well, that, I think that's it for me. Do you have any questions? Towards the end here.
um sure. I mean, how can I help you? I mean, how can I be of service to you or to anyone following? Like, is there anything that I can provide, or just any way that you can think of that I can provide value or bring value to you?
Um, yeah. I mean, at least, I don't know. Like for me, like just to see, like just, I don't know, just to. I mean, it's just a pleasure to see this journey of you trying to achieve balance. For me personally, like there's nothing like um more uh one of the things that just like is really satisfying is just when I see a person on their journey to like achieve a life of balance like that.
Yeah.
I would not, I wouldn't want any, like I would want nothing like less for another individual like in life to like to 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 ask those questions about themselves, like what, like who am I, and like what can I do with this time that I have, and
Yeah.
in which I can like be happy but also um take care of my family, take care of friends, and also like this community that I've built.
Yeah.
To see that is just my ultimate pleasure, and I think you're already well on your way to that.
Yeah, well, I will definitely be shutting out your podcast once it goes live. So that is one way I will definitely. I don't have that many followers,
No,
but
no,
it's
you have
for what it's
way
worth.
more than you have a lot
It's
already though. Like hundreds. It's when you describe hundreds of people, I mean that's, think of like a room filled with hundreds of people.
it's true actually. Like I mean, I saw this meme. I don't know if it was a meme, but it was a picture that was saying like this is what like 100 people looks like, and it's just like I guess capturing people in different settings, and it's like it's true. Like 100 people is a lot, but I mean, I will definitely. I guess like in the grander scheme of things,
Yeah.
whoever needs to be listening to this will listen to it. Like I could have 1,000 followers, I can have 10,000, and if I shout you out and no one listens to it, doesn't matter. But if one person listens to the stuff that you've put out there, like there's definitely there's value and even in just the one, you know.
Hmm. That would be really cool. Well, where can they find you, Ellie? Where you're
Ellie,
so.
where can they find Ellie? Okay, so I have right now Instagram and TikTok. So I'm
Hmm.
trying with TikTok. It's hard to keep up with all the trends. But anyway, my at name is at elliealcala.co. So ELIALCALA.co. And YouTube, it's just my name, Ellie Alcala. So ELIALCALA. And yeah, I
That's
that's
a
all I
really cool
have.
name, by the way. It's just it flows very well. There's Ellie Alcala. It's very
Ellie
nice.
Alcala. Yes, honestly, I it's funny because I used to hate my last name when I was younger
Uh
because
huh.
it starts with an A and it was so I'm like the first one to be
Oh
called for
no.
everything, but also because it was so unique and like
Mm-hmm.
something about being a kid and standing out just did
Mm.
not sit well with me. So I always wanted like the common Hispanic last name, like Martinez or Sanchez. Like I always just wanted to like fit in. But now that I'm older, I love my last name. Like it's just very rare when
Mm-hmm.
anyone else has it. So now I can appreciate like being unique in that way. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Honestly, Gabriel, it was a pleasure. Just it's a great way to start my morning for sure, and it's just amazing to connect with a new person online.
Mm.
Like that's always my favorite thing is just connecting with new people that I wouldn't otherwise have connected with if it wasn't for like the online space.
Yeah, definitely. It was all possible because of all the decisions that you made to try to better yourself, and you just so happened to come across me. So that I mean that's really cool that we were able to do that.
For sure.
So yeah, I mean, I always say this to like my guests. I would love like follow up sometime in the future because this is kind of like you said, like kind of like part of that
Yes,
documentation process.
for
Seeing you
sure.
like early on in this process, and I definitely love to get your perspective on that, but also um yeah, I just think that at least from what I've what we talked about, I think there's still plenty of stuff that like honestly like I still think there's still plenty of stuff that we could have dived into.
Oh yeah.
But because like and especially the mindset, I didn't get to ask too much about like there's like the growth mindset. I feel like there was a lot of like growth mindset, like maybe your thoughts on that, like but like a bunch of different topics. I think that would definitely be worth maybe diving into sometime in the future.
Of course, whenever you think it's time to bring me back on, just reach out. You know where to find me, and I'm sure we'll definitely make it happen again.
Very cool. Well, I enjoyed this 10th episode of the Gabriel podcast. Ellie Alcala here, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed her story. I know that I gained a lot of value from it. The insights of another person's journey um, is just always, it will never, ever like not be interesting to me. So there we go. That'll end this episode. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.
And